Suppose I told you that your future as a military officer would be decided in just one interview, 30 minutes, one room, one assessor, a few questions, and then selected or rejected. Sounds very simple, doesn't it? Then why doesn't the armed forces do exactly that? Why invest 5 full days in the selection system? Why involve psychologists, group testing officers, interviewing officers, and finally a conference? Why observe candidates in classrooms, outdoors, in groups, individually, and under pressure? Is the system unnecessarily complicated? Or is every stage solving a very specific problem? Today, we're going to understand why the SSB is not just a selection process. It is a carefully designed system. Human beings form opinions remarkably quickly, sometimes within seconds. Think about your own life. Have you ever met someone and immediately thought, he's very confident, only to realize later that that confidence was actually overconfidence? Or perhaps you met someone who hardly spoke, yet over time you discovered wisdom, maturity, and quiet leadership. First impressions are useful, but they are not always reliable. Now imagine making an officer's selection decision on nothing more than a first impression. The cost of that mistake could be enormous. Which is why the SSB refuses to depend on first impressions alone. Officer selection requires evidence, not impressions. Every organization makes hiring decisions. Some decisions turn out well, others don't. Most organizations can absorb a poor hiring decision. The armed forces operate differently. An officer may one day command soldiers, influence morale, make decisions under uncertainty, carry responsibility where mistakes have consequences far beyond personal performance. Therefore, the objective is not merely to identify capable candidates. It is also to minimize the chances of selecting unsuitable ones. The SSB is therefore designed not only to identify strengths, but also to detect inconsistencies. Imagine candidate A. Brilliant interview, excellent communication, confident personality, but during group tasks, interrupts others, refuses suggestions, dominates discussions, becomes very impatient. Suddenly, a different picture emerges. Now imagine candidate B. Quiet, not flashy, average interview, yet repeatedly supports others, thinks clearly, remains calm, takes initiative naturally. Over those 5 days, which candidate begins to inspire greater confidence? That is why the SSB is interested in patterns, not isolated performances. A single moment can impress. A pattern reveals character. One of the hidden strengths of the SSB is something rarely discussed. Think of it as triangulation. The same candidate is observed by 3 different specialists. The psychologist studies how you think. The GTO observes how you behave with others. The interviewing officer understands your life story, motivations, and self-awareness. Each assessor works independently. They are not trying to influence one another. Later, during the conference, these independent observations are compared. If all 3 point towards the same conclusion, confidence in the recommendation increases. In other words, the SSB does not trust a single source of evidence. It looks for convergence. That's one of the reasons it has remained respected for decades. Imagine if one person conducted every assessment. A strong first impression or a poor one could color every later observation. That is called bias. The SSB reduces this possibility by separating responsibilities. Each assessor sees you through a different lens. Only after independent observations are completed do they come together. That is institutional fairness built into the design. Independent observation, collective judgment. Now let's understand the system not procedurally but logically. The first step is screening. The question is not, should this candidate be recommended? The question is, should this candidate continue? Number 2, psychology. Before group influence begins, the system wants to understand how the candidate naturally thinks. Number 3, the group task officer. Now the question changes. How does the person behave when real people are involved? Number 4, interview. Does this candidate's life story support what the earlier assessment suggests? And number 5, conference. Do all the observations tell the same story, or are there contradictions that need further discussion? One of the most common questions aspirants ask is, what should I say? But perhaps the better question is, who am I becoming? A rehearsed answer can survive an interview. A rehearsed personality struggles to survive 5 days. Authenticity demands less effort than performance. And the SSB is specifically designed to distinguish between the two. The SSB is not only an examination, only an interview, only psychology, only physical tasks. It is a system that brings together multiple perspectives to answer one question. Does this candidate possess the potential to grow into a trusted military leader? That is what makes the SSB unique. Okay, so now let me give you 3 key takeaways from this particular episode. Number 1, the 5-day structure exists to identify consistent behavior, not isolated performances. Number 2, independent assessors reduce bias and increase the reliability of recommendations. And number 3, the SSB is designed to discover patterns that reveal officer potential over time. So the next time someone asks you, why does the SSB take 5 days? You will know the answer. Not because 5 days are convenient, not because tradition demands it, but because understanding a human being takes time. It requires observation. It requires comparison. It requires consistency. And consistency cannot be measured in a single conversation. In our next episode, we will move on to the first gateway of the SSB, screening. Why do so many candidates go home on day 1? And what is the system actually looking for at this stage? Until then, remember, the SSB does not reward the best performance. It rewards the most consistent demonstration of officer potential. This is Inside the SSB, case file 002. I will see you in the next episode. Jai Hind.